Hi there, my name is Kahn. I teach Algebra 2 at John Ribault High School in Jacksonville, Florida, and today I'll be discussing Vygotsky's theory of social interaction with you. We're going to be walking through 5 slides today. First of all, who was Vygotsky? Why is he so important? And then second, what is his specific social interaction theory? That is going to be the focus of our presentation. Why was his theory so important and revolutionary in the field of developmental psychology? What impact did it have, both in the psychology field as well as in education? And then we'll get more specific and talk about your experience in your classroom. What can we use about our knowledge of Vygotsky's theory to better promote understanding in your own students' experience? Finally, we'll end with some discussion questions. Who was Lev Vygotsky? I think I finally mastered saying the name correctly, which is great. He was born in Russia in 1896, and he died in 1934 at the age of 38. Most remembered him as an extremely influential developmental psychologist. He proposed his theory on cognitive development, the theory that we are talking about today, in the late 1920s. He also had other significant contributions besides this theory, and I would say his most significant one was his theory on the zone of proximal development. It ties into our theory we're talking about today, so I'm going to touch on it a little bit more in slide 3. And the significance of Vygotsky's contributions to psychology weren't fully realized over here in the United States until 1962, so almost 30 years after his death. And that's when his theory on social interaction was first published in the American Journal. And maybe 20 years later, it really started to have an impact in American classrooms and in the field of education. What is Vygotsky's social interaction theory? It's the focus of our presentation today. And if you were to contain it to one sentence, it would be that development is social. All right? Also, development has a significant influence from culture, not just being social and social interactions, but also the culture between the learner and the teacher plays a significant impact in the development of that student. To promote cognitive development, social interaction should take place within a learner's zone of proximal development, that zone we were talking about earlier. This zone, there's a graphical representation of it here, is the types of tasks that a learner can do with guidance. There's tasks that the learner can do independently. There's tasks that the learner cannot do at all, even with assistance. But if we want to see the best cognitive development in our learners, we want to aim for that zone where we can help them get there. They have a lot of words for this in education. Scaffolding is probably what you have heard to push the students to that next level. So Vygotsky's theory has a specific focus on language. When I took a class in ESOL through Florida Southern College as well, I learned about Vygotsky and his importance in the field of language development. But his studies have been applied to all sorts of cognitive development. And even as a math teacher, I can see how his studies can be so influential in my own teaching. So it doesn't only apply to language. Why should we care about this? Well, first of all, this was a direct challenge when it was initially published to Jean Piaget's theory that cognitive development precedes learning rather than the other way around. As Vygotsky's theory became the dominant view of educators, classrooms began to reflect the change to better promote their students' development. And rather than teachers leading the majority of the class through lecture or note-taking, which sometimes I still fall into even though I know better, educators were now encouraged to make their students a more active part of the learning process. So how can we actually do that? How can you use Vygotsky's theory of social interaction in your room? Well, probably through a lot of methods that you already know how to use or are using already. But here's some additional ones to just think about. So utilize teaching methods that get students talking and interacting with each other rather than just with you as the teacher or with the material in front of them. Methods could include think alouds, where a student is talking about the problem that they're doing. Think pair shares, where you're grouping students up and having them interact socially. Cold calling, where students are expected to explain their reasoning verbally. And student presentations in front of the class is always valuable as well. Encourage students to talk about their work rather than just do their work. This is a challenge for me as a mathematics teacher because sometimes I want to just say, the most important thing is that you understand how to solve for x or how to get to that final answer. But if we really value our kids' holistic development cognitively, we should value their understanding at a deeper level of this stuff, and social interaction is how we do that. Always shoot for scaffolding that consistently places students in their ZPD, which was that zone of proximal development I was talking about before. The content should be rigorous and challenging enough without being impossible, because that's where cognitive development happens the quickest. Differentiate in your lesson plans, that magic word, differentiation. Differentiate according to targeted groups, so more students can enter that ZPD and develop to the best of their ability. And then also include higher order questions in your lesson plans and actually use them in your lessons to get kids talking about material out loud or have them writing it down, interacting with others so that they can really stretch themselves and lead to better understanding. And always encourage collaboration, working with one another, because that's how problems are solved in the real world. If you want to discuss this further in the comments, I would love to see that and respond to it. Here are some things to spark that thinking. What can you do to promote meaningful social interactions in your classroom? And what experiences have you had in the past with making your classroom more social compared to just a lecture-driven class? What was the effect according to student data and student engagement? These are my resources if you are interested. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for giving me the time, and I look forward to doing your presentations as well.